California prison don't build men, it breaks them unless you're built different. Tommy did time at Salinas Valley, one of the most corrupt and dangerous yards in California. That joint was wide open. Dirty COs ran dope and brought phones in like it was part of the program. He wasn't AB, he didn't need that patch. He was a wood, part of the wood pile. He rose through the ranks the hard way. Stabbings, riots, politics, pain, until the day came when the keys hit his palm and the weight of every white boy on that yard dropped on his shoulders. While Wes Watson was busy doing burpees and memorizing somebody else's war stories, Tommy was out here calling real shots, holding down yards where men bled for politics, not likes. This is DOC TV Unleashed, and this is Salinas Valley Corruption. What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV Unleashed. If you don't recognize this guest, he's been on the channel before. He has a crazy story, man. He did 28 years in the California prison system. He's been to all the crazy prisons, high desert, and today we're going to be talking about one of the infamous places he went, and that's Salinas Valley. For the people that don't know who you are, man, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself, tell them your name, and just where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
My name's Tommy Trauber. I'm from a small town called Santa Maria in the northern part of Santa Barbara County. Did, like you said, over 28 years in the system. Went to, a lot of the big joints, the major three, we talk about Salinas Valley, Kern Valley, High Desert, things like that.
Did you find out when you were being transferred to that camp, or do they just randomly come and just ship you guys?
Well, so I left High Desert and I went to the SHU. I went to Corcoran SHU, right, for a few years or whatever. Not exactly 3 years, but a little bit close to that. And then I got sent to another prison, Kern Valley, right? And I was at Kern Valley for a few years, and then they closed down one of the facilities there and made it SNY. So they transferred a bunch of us. They didn't really give me a heads up of where I was going. They asked me if I wanted to go to a couple of different places. Salinas Valley wasn't on that list, but the day that I got put on the bus, they're like, hey, you're going to Salinas Valley. So, you know what I mean? Not that I cared. Honestly, Salinas Valley was a cool joint for, if you were in the mix, cool. Salinas Valley is one of the places you wanted to be at, right? So that wasn't an issue. I just didn't put it on the list because when they take you to committee and they ask you what prisons you want to go to, they give you a list of prisons that are available for intake. Salinas Valley wasn't available for intake at the time for me anyway. And then all of a sudden, the day I transferred, I was going to Salinas Valley. So
you said in the mix, obviously, for the people just tuning in, you were, I know you hate the term, but shot caller, you were pulling strings.
I ran the yards, dude. When I got out of the SHU and I went down to Kern Valley, I went there with directives, right? I need you to control this. I need you to take over this. I need you to get rid of this guy. You know what I mean? These are things that need to be done. And then, because it was a fairly new prison. It had just opened up maybe like a year or so before that. And there was a little bit of turmoil. Anytime there's a new prison, there's a lot of turmoil because different races are trying to where you're going to hang out, where's going to be your workout area, all this stuff. That was one of the major issues with High Desert in the beginning. But, Kern Valley was a little bit different. It didn't go through that kind of a transition right away. Everybody was pretty amicable about where they were going to, have their tables, whose bars were going to be whose, which handball courts belonged to which race, things like that at first. But then there was, the drug trade. Then there was the, things like who's going to control that, who's going to, and then there's, knuckleheads, same as any other place. So when I got there, it'd been open almost a year, and there was a little bit of an issue with the guy that had the facility or had the prison. So I showed up with directives to order that dude back to the hole so he can, answer for some of the stuff that wasn't happening, and then also to rein in some of the bad behavior, you know what I mean, and get everybody back in line, you know what I mean. So I went there with that.
How, when you say send them back to the hole, how does that work?
You tell him next guy that needs to be stabbed, he's got to go. So he goes on that mission. So next time something comes up,
y'all are ruthless.
Yeah.
So for the people that may not understand that, when you get there, you go up to the dude that has the keys to the yard, tell him the next guy needs to be stabbed, but really you're sending him on a mission, kind of as a okey doke, right?
Well, no. I mean, I
No?
was very honest with people about that, right? So when I showed up, and it's funny. We were talking to Derek. We were just talking about that today, right? So I went to Kern. This is Kern Valley, by the way. I went to Kern Valley with directives to have the guy that had the yard there report back to the back, right? Well, there was already somebody there that needed to be removed, right? So when I told him that, I said, "Hey, you need to take care of that
I got you.
and go." You know what I mean? Because they're asking for you. They want to talk to you face to face, right? So he's like, "All right," but he didn't do that. Instead, he ordered some of his little underlings to do it. You know, and in the process, one of the guys got shot and killed by the cops. You know, so when that happened, now it's a bigger issue, right? So now it's like, okay, you screwed up. You should have did that yourself. First of all, second of all, now that a white dude got killed by the cops, now you're obligated to go hit a cop. You know,
And
so
that means to go stab a cop, right?
go stab the cop. Yep, you got to.
Man, what was up with this dude? He was just crashing all the way out, huh?
Yeah, you know, I think what happened was when he got there, you know, and it was like one of his first, you know, positions of authority, and he was a drug addict. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, you know, underneath everything else, while he was running the yard, he was getting high, right? He was using drugs, and people don't want, and especially heroin. You're going to get dope sick. It's going to happen. You're not going to want to go back to the hole because you're going to have to kick the heroin, and plus they enjoy it, right? They enjoy the you know, it's like a free guy going into prison, right? AdSig is like a free guy going into county jail, right? People don't want to have to do that. If they can avoid it, they do it. You know, even criminals, right? Nobody's trying to go to jail. You know, we might not care if we do, but at the same time,
Right.
you know, if you can avoid it, you know, there's a reason we run from the cops, right? We're not like, hey, take me to jail. You know what I mean? Right. So, you know, that's kind of the same. I always use that as an analogy, right? If you take AdSig and shoe and you go, okay, and you try to make somebody on the streets understand what you're talking about, it's kind of like AdSig's like the county jail where the shoe is like prison, right? To somebody on the streets. You take somebody from, and the main line is like somebody from, you're being on the streets. You got all your privileges, you got all your canteen, you got all your stuff, things like that, you know?
Yeah,
So
I'm not gonna lie, man. I've been locked up and being in a place like for a long period of time, like in one dorm with the same people. And almost like sometimes it's like, man, you can feel a crash out coming on. You know, you're going to the back, and you need that sometimes to like level out your mind again from all the. Did you ever feel like that?
Oh yeah, I would purposely take trips. You know
Okay,
I mean?
so you know what I mean.
So, yeah, well, for one, AdSig for me was a place for me to go get clarity, right? Because as you know, the term you use, right, shot caller, as somebody who's in a position of authority, my brain is constantly playing chess, right, out there on the main line, right? Every time I walk out to the yard, where's everybody positioned? What are everybody doing? Who's where? Who's what? Right? Listening to all the conversations, and then every night before I go to bed, you know, I evaluate every interaction that I had that day. Where was everybody at? What do I need to do tomorrow to, you know, try to circumvent some things? What do I need to do to shore up some other issues? Where can I make the most money? Who can I manipulate? It's our staff. You know what I mean? Where do I need to do? You know, and every day is that way, right? When you're in AdSig, you know, you're kind of just chilling.
Right.
You know what I mean? And as a person, I was single cell for a long time. So when I got to AdSig, there's nobody that can get next to me. There was nobody that get around me. The only person I had any interaction with was the officers because I didn't have a cellie, and you don't get yard with anybody else anymore. So, you know, I would just sit there. It was not opportunity to like decompress and reevaluate. You know, what can I do better? What do I need to do next time? And to communicate. Sometimes you need to show face. You know what I mean? Show up face to face to talk to people. You know what I mean? So they can understand. So you can give, because nobody can tell your story better than you. You know what I mean? And if information is getting to, you know, the big homies in the back, it's not getting to them from your mouth, it's getting it to somebody else's. Even if you write it on paper, right? Sometimes you need to just show up and say, hey, here's the truth, here's what's going on, boom, and explain yourself so that there's no misconceptions or any kind of like misinformation, you know?
So, if you can, man, take the people through what it was like your first couple months at Salinas Valley. Like, what was the vibe?
Yeah. Well, so the reason I ended up in Salinas was after they had flipped that yard in Kern Valley. And the reason why they chose to send me to Salinas was Salinas Valley It was a 270 yard. I had just got my 270 status back. And so they sent me there because they were flipping it from a level 3 to a level 2. I mean, excuse me, from level 3 to a level 4. So I showed up as part of the level 4 guys, and I was going into Salinas to fill those spots of those level 3s that were being transferred out. But we were on lockdown. As soon as I got there, already on lockdown, right? Because they had an issue with some level 4s who had stabbed a level 3. And so now they want to get all these level 3s out of there before the level 4s get any program. And then there was an ongoing war between the Norteños and the blacks. So we were getting like some program. We would get day room like every other day, for a couple hours. That was like our program, right? And but I mean, the day I walked into the prison, I ran into a guy that I knew from other prisons, and he was in the building with me. And he came down and hey, what's going on, man? I'm glad you're here. And then the guy who had the yard showed up and like immediately was like, here you go. He gave me a cell phone, some drugs, what we call a roll call, a list of people on the yard who were, on the yard, their names and background information, CDC numbers, things like that. And then, he's like, and I was trying to tell him, no, go ahead. It's you, right? Because I have a little weird philosophy when I go onto a facility. I don't like to just take over right away. I like to try to stand back and see who's doing what, how they're operating, things like that. And then I like to make a power move. Boom. You know what I mean? If the shot caller's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, where we're supposed to be there, then I round up my crew of guys and then we annihilate that dude. Because who he's going with. We never know who's on his leg. You know what I mean? So when a guy comes to you and he just immediately trying to give you the keys, I was like, it doesn't.
He might be handing off some debt or some shit.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm immediately wondering what's going on with him. Okay.
Yeah.
This, and then what's funny is he gave me the keys, and 2 weeks later he pieced it up. You know what I mean? So I didn't even get a chance to do anything with him. He just immediately split, right? Which I understand now because he had a lot of other skeletons in his closet, and the guy that I knew from the other prisons who came and talked to me the day I got there, he had went and told him, hey, you got to watch out for this guy. You know what I mean? He's going to lay low, and if you're fucking up, he's going to make it happen. And so that dude got scared, because he was fucking up. He was clipping off the top, and the next thing you know, he was gone.
Man, he was crashing all the way out.
He had been, and he was a level 3, right? And that's why I was like, why has he even got the yard? He's not going to be here. He's leaving. Who should have, who else is here? So then, we went through, I don't want to say a power struggle. There was kind of like a little issue where I decided, hey, you guys figure out who you want to have the yard. You know what I mean? No, not a lot of people knew me. They knew my name, but they didn't know me. There's a difference, right? So I kind of just laid low, but that didn't last very long.
How long was it before you had to partake in some violence, like at Salinas?
As far as ordering, or probably within a couple months, right? I don't know couldn't give you the exact time, but there was a guy there that had stole some stuff from another race, and and a stupid dude called me on the stolen cell phone. You know what I mean? So another guy, white guy, stole a cell phone from another race, right? And then he calls me on the cell phone.
Oh my God.
Not knowing that on my cell phone, I have that dude's number locked in, right?
That's funny.
Because he's, it was somebody we did business with, right? So I'm like, so when he called, I'm like, hey, and it was the other dude. And I'm like, and the other guy had already said, hey, the phone got stolen. You know what I mean? We're looking for it, and I was like, this dude's an idiot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I end up having to have him stabbed right away, and it's because it was another race. Now, truth is, I'm one of those guys. If you want to go punk somebody for something, and I mean, walk over and take it from them, that's one thing, right? It's another thing to steal something from somebody when they're not looking and then act like you don't know what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? So we end up having to have him removed, like right away. You know what I mean? And then we were on lockdown for a little while, and things were kind of calm. The thing about Salinas Valley is that when I got there, because there was so much money to be made, I tried to keep the level of violence down to a minimum. You know what I mean? Because the longer you're on lockdown, the less money you're making, right? And in that situation, because there was a lot of corruptness at that time, and I won't say that Salinas Valley is less corrupt. I don't know. I'm not, in there. I don't know. I'm not in there as an inmate or anything like that or whatever. But I know that like at that time, Salinas Valley was super corrupt when it came to cell phones, drugs, things like that, right? They were coming in from everywhere. And so if you wanted to be a part of that, you had to stay mobile. You know what I mean? Meaning not locked down while everybody else is out. Right? You needed to stay in the mix. You needed to stay mobile. So my job was to keep the violence down to a minimum, take care of the people that need to be taken care of, but make sure that money continues to flow. Right. So that's what I went there. Matter of fact, at one point, one of the captains pulled me out after a particular incident and was like, hey, look, just so you know, the only reason I keep you here is because you've been a peaceful presence. keep it that way. And I'll let you get away with whatever you want.
Yeah.
Keep it that way. You know what I mean? And so, I stayed there for about 5 years before they finally got rid of me, before some stuff erupted and there was a big old power struggle between, two factions of whites. And then there was a big old.
So what happened with that? That sounds interesting.
So like at that time there was, you probably heard of Public Enemy number 1, P9 Skins, right? There was a couple guys that showed up for P9 that, claiming they had the facility. There was another guy on another facility claiming to have the facility, and just like claiming to have the whole place. It was just, there was this huge power struggle going on. And then one guy showed up and said somebody else was a rat, all this different stuff. Well, that dude they were saying was a rat was part of my inner circle. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hey, where's the paperwork? You say he's a rat. I want to see the paperwork, right? And they're trying to say this other guy had it and all this other stuff. So they're created this division at that moment, right? And then so shit hit the fan. One day they came out, the guy that was saying the other dude was a rat sent somebody on a little mission to try to get that dude, right? So when they moved on him, me and one of my best friends, one of my closest allies, and we jumped in. And then next thing you know, a bunch of people jumped in. Next year, there's big old white on white, dust up on the yard. And they end up removing everybody from that specific facility, putting us all in ADSEG. And that created just so many issues, because now the whole leadership structure is gone. And now there's a power vacuum, where people are now trying to like, okay, who's going to take over? Who's going to run this? Who's going to run that? Who's going to keep, because that was my job and I was good at it. Right. And I'm not proud of that now, but at the time I was good at it. Right. So I was like, now all this shit's gone. Who's going to talk to the blacks? Who's going to talk to the Mexicans? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Right. And so when we all went to the because I had to jump in. One of my closest allies getting hit,
Yeah, you got to go.
I got to go.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. I guess I could have stayed back. I think back on it, I could have stayed back, right? Nobody would have made a big old fuss about it. But that's not how I operated. I operated like, if you got my back, I got your back. You know what I mean? I'm going to help you out, right? And in this case, he was wrongfully, hit. It came out later that it wasn't true, that his crime partner was trying to smut him up because his crime partner was mad about some other bullshit. You know what I mean? So, and that happens. It happens. That's part of prison politics, right? Is if you can get the ear of the right guy, man, you could really have some shit done without showing any paperwork, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we ended up on a whole nother facility, went over there, you know what I mean? And immediately, right in the middle of it. And, and I'm trying to orchestrate stuff back on this other facility to get those guys. But then everybody started piecing up, right? Everybody that was involved in that incident all started piecing up, and so it was kind of hard. You can't get them once they go to the PC yard, right? So once they're over there, they're, it's a wrap. They're, it's over. But at the same time, you got your guys who are now, we're all struggling to get back into that situation, right? But Sleep Valley, I'll say this, man, and I hate to say it, and I don't like talking about it in that way, but there was so much drugs coming into that prison. There was time when I was getting 4 pieces of heroin, 4 ounces of speed, 2 pounds of weed, and 20 phones every week. You know what I mean?
What? Hold on. So that's one of the questions I want to ask you was how much money you were bringing in from like moving that much type of stuff. But that's the kind of stuff you were getting in.
Yeah, I walked straight to my cell.
That's nuts. So everybody had a phone then.
For a long time. It got to the point to where I stopped bringing in phones because they weren't selling. Like dudes would come to my door and be like, "Hey, you got a T-Mobile? You got this? You got?" Well, no, I got Verizon right now. Oh no, I want T-Mobile. You know what I mean? They were getting picky, And there was a time when I had a bunch of phones hidden that I couldn't sell. You know what I mean? Because everybody had one. All the people that had the money had one, right?
Yeah, they were flooded.
Yeah, little flip phones were only going for like $200. It was so flooded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And prison, those are usually 1,800. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? These things are going for 200, $250. And man, it got to the point to where I was waiting for people to get rated. And as soon as they get rated, I just go slide them a phone and just get me when you can.
You were in there, like, what person got in the most debt that you remember?
Oh man, you know what? It actually, there was a guy that was over $30,000 with the blacks. You know what I mean?
With
And
the opposite race?
with an opposite race because he couldn't buy from me. You know what I
Oh
mean?
man,
So
he was dead in the addiction then.
yeah, and
Going
he
to
ended
the
up getting
opposite, like to get
yeah.
drugs. That's
Well,
crazy.
you know what? His old lady, right? And she had tons of money. She was making $1 million a year. She was in some advertising company. She was making a ton of money, and then she got laid off. You know what I mean?
And then
And
that
so
hard
now
time came because that canteen window closed on his ass.
quick, right?
I
And then
bet.
they started struggling. She's like, "Hey, I can't pay for your drug debts right now because now I have to move to this other company in Minnesota from California to Minnesota, and now I'm using all that money that we saved up to move to get a place and do all this other stuff. I don't have the money to pay that debt. You're gonna have to wait a couple months."
So what was
People
his
ain't waiting.
reaction?
Well, he didn't tell us about it at first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he didn't come to me and go. And that's the one of the things, man, I was trying to explain to him too. But right before, he got hit, right? It's like, you would have just came to me, bro. I might have been able to work with you. I might have been able to buy you time. I was making anywhere between 15 to 20 grand a month, right? So I'm like, you could come in, you could have came to me, bro, and I would have helped you. But instead, you're over here lying to me. Because I went to him after I found out the blacks came to me and they're like, hey, this dude showed me the paperwork, and I was like, oh shit. You know what I mean? First, I'm like, why'd you let him get that far?
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
was.
because he was paying it, is what they kept saying, right? He was paying it. Well, of course, but for one, he ain't even supposed to be doing business with you guys. You know what I mean? So
What
why did
happened
you
to
let
him?
him get that far? Well, we ended up whacking him, So he got chopped up. I mean, he didn't die. I think, thankfully he didn't die, but he got life flighted out of there. I mean, he's missing, part of his liver, and he's probably gonna poop in a bag for the rest of his life. But just
Would you say that like the main problem, like with violence and all the stabbings and maybe even the gangs, is caused by so many people being high while they're in there and on drugs?
absolutely, absolutely. Well, drugs is, and I believe fully that drugs are used to control people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Manson did it with his little following. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think that's the case with the organizations in there as well as the staff, right? Is they allow a certain amount of drugs to come in because it keeps the population under control. People want to get high. People want to do this. You know what I mean? And it kind of like, and we did it to each other. We bring them in, we sell the stuff, and then when I needed somebody to do something that was, hey, how much money you owe? Oh, you're up 1,600. Well, this guy's up 12. Why don't you whack him?
Let me ask you this question. So if we're in a dorm and like if me and you were in a dorm and there's a bunch of other white boys, we're all in the same clique affiliated, and a new white boy comes in the dorm and like two of the other white boys go over to him and find out he gets money and he also does dope. Are those two white boys now going to go to another white boy, get the dope, and then sell it to him and kind of cuff him and bring him into the group? Or are they going to be like, nah, bro, if you're riding with us, that ain't going to happen. Like, you're not going to
No,
get high.
no, they're going to get him high. Because here's what's happening, right? A lot of guys are like, okay, I'm going to go buy 3 grams for 500, and I'm going to turn around and chip this dude off,
Right.
a gram for 500.
Yeah.
So I can keep I'm going to chip him quarter grams for $100 until he pays his $500 off, and then I keep the rest. And then me and my buddies get high, right? That's what they do. Like, one of the things was you buy 3 grams of heroin for $500. People would make little papers out of it, little quarter grams, little $50 papers and stuff, and they would sling it to pay off that $500. But when there's a mass amount of dope on the yard, you're not making that much money on that shit. Plus, they're only making enough to stay high,
Right.
not
Do it for
to make
free.
any money. Yeah, they're basically.
Hopefully.
And they
Hopefully.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? They get these new kids showing up that they find out not only they got money and their family's taking care of them, but they get high. So they want to pull them under their wing so they can chip them off. Hey, let me go get you some dope. Let me go get you this, Oh, yeah, this guy wants $200 for this gram, but he don't want $200 for that gram. He only wanted 150. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So now this dude, you know what I mean? Now this dude's pulling 50, which is hustle, right? I guess it's hustle. But at the same time, when that kid can't pay, guess what? They victimize that kid. You
Right.
know what
Do
I
you
mean?
think that's self-destructive for the race though? Like to operate that way?
Yeah, and you know what's messed up? It's not just the whites.
No, I
You know what I
know.
mean?
Yeah, I'm sure it's everyone
It
at
is
that point.
self-destructive, right? And it's one of those situations to where, like, if I could have controlled that part of it, I would have. You know what I mean? It was really hard. Like, I didn't sell to the whites, not because I didn't want them getting high, but because I didn't trust them. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
Just straight up, right?
Yeah,
I
no, I
because
appreciate the honesty.
within our organization, right? If I had sold to the whites and they didn't pay me, I'd have to deal with that. You know, personally, if they didn't pay me, I'd have to deal with the person. Yeah, sure, I could have ordered it, and it would have definitely gotten done. But over time, what would end up happening was people would start looking at you like, oh, you don't want to handle your own business, right? Because you're only good as your last hit. You know what I mean? So so what I would do was every once in a while, whites would get pissed off at me. Oh man, you don't sell to the whites. No, I don't. If you want to come up with the money up front, I'll sell you a whole piece of heroin, $2,000, a whole piece. There you go, 25 grams for $2,000. You can make as much money as you want, but you got to come up with the money first. You know what I mean? Or because I had an avenue where I was bringing shit in through, right? I'm like, hey, get a package ready, get the money ready to pay the guy to bring it for me, and I'll let you use that avenue that week. I'm not tripping. I'm making enough money. I'm not really tripping. But you couldn't do it. So what ends up happening is they want to say, well, can you front me? No, 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 no. I ain't fronting you nothing. You know what I mean? There was a few guys on the yard, like a couple blacks, a couple northerners. And my thing was, as long as everybody was getting a piece of the bag, every race, it was cool. You know what I mean? So if you shared with the others, you know, I'd let some guy who was another bring some stuff in every once in a while. I'd let a Southerner bring some stuff in, and then we would all sell in bulk to the other races, right? So that they can make money. Now everybody's making money. Everybody's happy. The more money people are making, the happier people are. The less likely there are violence on the yard, and you can control your situation way better that way. You know?
Was it hard for you to like program with other whites that weren't getting high and get like fucking off?
No, actually, I tried to surround myself with those people. You know what I mean? With the people that didn't get high, right? Because I never tried it. So I would try to surround myself because those people were more trustworthy. You know what I mean? I can relate with them, but also there were some that were like they weren't getting high, but they were also didn't want to be nothing to do with the mix. You know what I mean? And I get that. So I kind of just left them alone, let them do their own thing, right? And there was a couple times people would get at me and they're like, "Hey, why don't you ask?" You know, we had a really good friend of mine named Eddie Kane, right? And Eddie Kane kind of stayed out of the mix, but I liked Eddie a lot. But he didn't get high, he didn't mess around, but he was doing LWAP, right? So a lot of guys were like, "Why don't you ask Eddie to do it?" Because Eddie's not trying to get involved. You know what I mean? Why don't you ask Eddie to do this? He's not trying to get involved. Why would I ask Eddie to do anything? That dude's minding his own business. You know what I mean? They go, but you asked that one guy to put in work. He's only got 5 years. I go, yeah, but he's running around with dope in his pocket. That's a felony in prison. That's a life sentence in California, right? You can get life sentence for that under the 3 strikes law. I said, he's willing to put his life on the line for drugs, but he's not willing to put his life on for the woodpile. Why would I care about that dude?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but Eddie over here is minding his own business, not causing me any problems. But you want me to get rid of the guy that's not causing me problems and keep the guys that are. I said, that make no sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what I meant. I think one time we had that conversation about I had to control the amount of information that was going on, going back to the back, right? So for every 2 or 3 guys that didn't like me, I would send a guy that did.
Right.
You know, some people would say it doesn't pay to be Tommy's friend because he's going to send you on a mission. And it's true, right? But I also had to control the amount of information that was going out, right? So like if, you know, 3 guys go back there and they're smutting me up. Most of the time they're smutting me up because I took their drugs away from them or I took their program away from them or whatever. They were fucking up. So I'd send a guy back there who will, you know, say, hey, Tommy sent him back here. These are the reasons why. Because they often completely leave out the fact that they were in debt $1,200.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Conveniently.
They go back there and they go, oh, yeah, Tommy sent me on a mission. And I'm 3 years to the pad. They don't say Tommy sent me on a mission because I was $1,200 in debt.
Right.
You know what I mean? They left that part out. You know, and then my guy would show up and he'd be like, no, homeboy was $1,200 in debt. No, homeboy was this. Homeboy was doing dope because we're not allowed to take like open consumable, right, from blacks or northerners or whatever, right? So like there was one guy who was taking like they were giving out, man, they were giving out these pills, dude. They were called methadone pills. Like they were candy,
damn,
right?
really?
Yeah, they were giving them out as pain management over there,
Yeah.
right? They'll give you methadone, right? So he was getting the methadone pills from the black guy after the black guy, mine had been crushed, put in water, and the dude had to put them in his mouth and spit it back out, right? And dude's taking this. It's a no-no, right?
Wow.
But he gets back to the back and he says, I got in trouble for buying dope. But I was
Yeah,
paying my
right.
bills. But yeah, but what he forgot to say is that he was buying the dope from the dude that just spit it out of his freaking mouth. You know what I mean? And the funny part about it is I warned him twice before I had
He's on that dope, man. That dope will overrides anything.
Anything, bro.
Or anyone.
And yeah, any common sense, right? Any sense of like safety, even. You know what I mean? You're going to put your neck on the line, and literally, right? So after dude gets hit, he goes to the back, right? And he's like, yeah, dude, Tommy freaking hit me because I was buying dope from a black. No. That's not why. You know what I mean? So now I have to send somebody back there to explain it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because he had some powerful people on his side. You know what I mean? So when he left, I was like, okay, I got to make sure I got to send somebody over there immediately to make sure that the information that they get is the correct information and not the wrong information. The good thing for me is by then I'd been in the system long enough that everybody knew me.
So your word, they knew like your word was what it was then. Yeah,
I'm gonna do what, because I said I lived impeccably, right, beyond reproach. I followed the rules no matter what they were to a T. I didn't deviate, not even in myself, not even by myself, right? I did so because I believed in what I had convinced myself that this cause that we lived by was one of honor and, it was just, right? But it wasn't. I mean, it was a bunch of malarkey. But at the time, I didn't think I was ever getting out of prison for one. So, I'm like, this is going to be where I'm going to be at for the rest of my life. I want to stay at the top. The people that failed, as I watched other people fail, it was always because they were doing stuff behind the scenes that were against the rules. And eventually it came out, and that was a wrap. If you don't do anything, nobody, and people know that, everybody knew. Tommy never, this one guy went in there and tried to say Tommy's out there getting high and he's messing everybody up, right? The dude laughed at him. Tommy's a straight edge. Now, it was notorious straight edge. Right, I was one of those guys that I hated people that did drugs. I didn't hate the people that did them. I hate the people that got in trouble for it. You know what I mean? Because you're creating problems for me. You can trade, and it's like you're getting drugs from another race. You're getting put in a situation from all these other people, and well, you're putting every white boy on the yard in jeopardy. Our old guys, our young guys, our frail dudes. Everybody's getting jeopardy now because you can't pay your fucking bills, right? Because you can't keep the stupid needle out of your arm, and you're going to be mad at me because I'm going to have you whacked. The fuck over it. You say all that crap, but most people knew that I was not. I was doing everything that I could to maintain decorum on all our facilities.
And the way you did your time before all that shit went down proved like that's how you got that status. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I always lived my life impeccably in there, ironically. Right?
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on again. If you guys are new and you're tuning in, this is the kind of content I cover on this channel. If you like this type of content, please, man, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn your post notifications on so every time I do drop content like this, you can hear it first. And with that, this is DOC TV Unleashed, and we're out.